I've been out of the army for over 20 years, but Mogadishu never left me. I can still taste the air, gritty, metallic, mixed with diesel fumes and the copper tang of blood. Back then, I was Sergeant Daniel Hawk Mercer, 3rd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, a sniper trained to see without being seen. The mission was supposed to be simple: capture warlord lieutenants, disrupt supply lines, keep the city from boiling over. We thought we'd be in and out. What we got instead was hell in a square mile of concrete, rusted corrugated iron, and sun-baked streets that stank of sewage and fear. October 3rd, 1993, the day the city swallowed us whole. I was set up in a burned-out hotel overlooking a choke point near Hallway to Grode. My rifle, an M24 SWS, rested on a bipod atop shattered glass. I had 7.62 mm match-grade rounds, night vision gear, and a spotter, private first-class Ellis. We were ghosts, or so we thought. The radio crackled non-stop, convoys trapped, birds down, hostiles flooding in like ants. I watched chaos through my scope. Somali militia with battered AKs, RPG-7s slung over shoulders, darting through alleyways like wraiths. I picked targets carefully, breathing slow, finger resting just so on the trigger. At first, it felt like any other mission. Then I saw something that still freezes me at night. A figure stepped out of the haze, a man in ragged robes, face painted with white ash, moving unnaturally calm amid gunfire. He raised a hand, and every fighter in the street froze, like puppets on invisible strings. "Do you see that?" Ellis whispered. I didn't answer. Through the scope, I swear his eyes glowed faintly, pale, like opal stones. He looked straight at me, like he knew exactly where I was. My finger froze on the trigger. Then he vanished behind a collapsing wall, militia scattering after him. "Just nerves," I muttered, though my mouth was dry. That was the first crack in my reality. Hours later, as the sun bled out and tracer fire lit the sky, Mogadishu became something else entirely. The city didn't just feel hostile, it felt alive. The streets breathed heat and whispers. Shadows moved against the direction of light. Ellis leaned close, whispering over the din of machine guns. "Sarge, do you hear that?" At first, I thought it was the radio. But no, it was chanting. Low, guttural, like voices buried beneath the earth, echoing up through the concrete. That's when I realized this wasn't just war. Something older was awake here. We moved at dusk. The air was a furnace, smoke curling from burning tires. My sniper hide had become a death trap, too much attention. Ellis and I slithered down a fire escape, boots crunching on glass. My M24 was slung, and I had my M9 sidearm out, finger ready. The city was a labyrinth. Narrow alleyways, crumbling stucco walls pockmarked with bullet holes, stray goats bleating in the distance. Every shadow felt like it was watching. "Check 6, I whispered. Ellis nodded, scanning behind us. We were supposed to link up with Chalk 4 near the crash site, but the comms were garbage, static, occasional bursts of screaming, and something else. Between the white noise, I could swear I heard whispers, not in English, not Somali, older, like a prayer from a time before languages split. We ducked behind a burnt-out Toyota Hilux. A child's sandal lay in the dirt, fresh blood on it. The sight twisted my gut. Ellis nudged me. Movement. Ahead, 2 silhouettes crossed the alley, AKs slung low. They didn't see us. I steadied my breath, raised the M24, and put a round through the lead man's chest. The second man darted for cover, but Ellis dropped him with a controlled burst from his M4. The gunfire echoed down the narrow street, and then silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. I scanned through the scope, and that's when I saw him again. The man with the pale eyes. He stood in the doorway of a gutted building, staring. Behind him, figures shifted in the gloom. Tall, thin shapes that didn't move like men. "Ellis," I hissed. "You see him?" Ellis leaned over, peering through binoculars. "No, just rubble." My blood turned cold. He was looking right at us. The man raised his hand again, palm out, and I felt pressure in my chest, like someone was pushing me back. I blinked, and he was gone. That's when the alley filled with sound, not gunfire, but whispers, hundreds of them, rising and falling like the tide. Ellis clutched his headset. "It's in the radio." Jesus Christ. I yanked the earpiece out, but the whispers didn't stop. They were all around us, like the walls themselves were murmuring. We moved faster, skirting corners, scanning every window. Night fell hard, and city became something alien. Tracer fire streaked overhead, but the whispers drowned out even that. "Stay sharp," I told Ellis. We turned a corner, and I froze. Ahead was a burned-out market square, lit by the flicker of oil drums. Bodies hung from makeshift scaffolds, UN peacekeepers, Somali civilians, maybe even rangers. They swayed gently, as if in an unseen breeze. And on the ground, scrawled in what I swear was blood, were symbols I didn't recognize. Circles, spirals, jagged lines that hurt to look at. Ellis whispered, "Sarge, what the hell is this place?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Ellis and I crawled into the market square, rifles raised. The bodies above us creaked softly on their ropes, casting long, crooked shadows. The smell hit us next, rot diesel, and something metallic, sharp, like ozone before a storm. We kept moving, low and silent. I took point, scanning every dark corner. My scope passed over one of the hanging corpses, a man in fatigues, eyes bulging, face bloated. For a moment, I thought he twitched. I froze, breath held. Then his head turned toward me. "Jesus," I muttered, jerking back. "What?" Ellis whispered sharply. "The body. It never mind." I steadied myself. I'd seen plenty of death. Maybe I was rattled. Maybe exhaustion was making me see things. We crossed the square and ducked into a narrow alley. The whispers were louder here, threading through the static of our comms, like voices behind walls we couldn't see. My hand tightened on the M24. "Think we're close?" Ellis asked, voice tight. "Crash site's 3 blocks out." I said, "Keep your head." The alley opened into a courtyard where an old Soviet truck sat rusting, weeds pushing through its shattered windshield. I motioned for Ellis to cover while I moved forward to check. That's when I felt it. Eyes on me. I swung the scope up. In a window on the second floor of a ruined apartment building, a face stared back. Pale, hollow-eyed. Not the man from before, but a boy. His head tilted unnaturally, like his neck had snapped. He mouthed something. I couldn't hear it over the whispers, but I could read lips. "Leave." I blinked, and the window was empty. Breathing hard. "Sarge, I'm not right. My head's pounding. I'm seeing." He trailed off, shaking his head. "Forget it." "Stay sharp," I ordered, though my stomach twisted. We pushed forward, weaving through tight streets that seemed to twist on themselves. I swore we'd passed the same burned-out pharmacy twice. I checked the GPS unit clipped to my plate carrier, dead. Screen flickering. That's when gunfire erupted. Rounds cracked off the walls around us. Ellis dropped to a knee, returning fire. I rolled behind a wall, peeking around to spot targets. But what I saw wasn't militia. Figures moved in the darkness, but they weren't solid. They flickered like heat haze. One darted across the street, and I fired. The round passed straight through it, sparking against concrete. Contact left. Ellis shouted, firing in controlled bursts. The air was thick with whispers now, overlapping, chanting. My rifle felt heavy. The city seemed to shift around us, alleyways stretching and narrowing. And then, between bursts of gunfire, I heard something clearly for the first time. Mercer, my name, spoken in a voice that wasn't Ellis's. We ducked into an abandoned hotel to regroup, barricading the door with the half-rotted sofa. The place reeked of mildew and gun oil, walls peeling, broken furniture scattered like bones. Ellis slumped against the wall, breathing hard. His hands trembled as he reloaded. "They knew your name," he whispered. I froze. "You heard it too?" He nodded, pale under his helmet. I checked the hallway through my scope. No movement, but the whispers were still there, muffled now, as if the building itself was murmuring. "Comms check," I muttered into my mic chalk 4. "This is Hawk. Do you copy?" Static, then a faint voice. "Get out, get out." "Say again." "Out before dark." I yanked the earpiece out, hard hammering. That wasn't any of our guys. We swept the ground floor, clearing room by room. Every door creaked like a scream. Every shadow seemed to ripple. In one hallway, I found bullet holes in the walls, but no exit wounds. Like the rounds had just vanished. We set up in a second-floor suite with a view of the street. I laid out my rifle, checked ammo. 6 rounds left for the M24, 3 mags for the M4. Ellis had 4 mags. We were running dry. "Rest a minute," I said. Ellis leaned his head back, eyes closed. I kept watch, scope sweeping the darkened streets. That's when I saw the man again. He stood in the middle of the road, white robes fluttering in a wind I couldn't feel. His pale eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He raised a hand, palm open, and I felt that same crushing pressure in my chest. I tried to steady the rifle, but my vision blurred. He mouthed something I couldn't understand. Then, without moving, he was suddenly closer. At the base of the hotel. "Ellis up," I barked. Ellis scrambled to his rifle, but before he could aim, the man vanished. Silence, then footsteps. Not from outside, from upstairs. Ellis swung toward the stairwell, eyes wide. We cleared it. I signaled him to hold. The steps were slow, deliberate. Something heavy dragged against the floor. I switched to the M4, covering the door. The footsteps stopped outside our room. "Who's there?" I called. No answer, just breathing. Deep, ragged. I glanced at Ellis and nodded. He swung the door open, and I raised my rifle. The hallway was empty. Then a door slammed somewhere down the hall, and all the lights flickered, every dead bulb buzzing to life for a split second, casting long, warped shadows. Ellis cursed. "This place is wrong, Sarge." I couldn't argue. That's when the whispers turned into laughter. Underscore, 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 underscore. We held position, rifles trained on the stairwell. As the laughter faded back into whispers, hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time felt broken. The night outside seemed endless, the city drowned in darkness. Ellis was shaking. "Sarge, I think we're trapped. This isn't—" He gestured at the walls, voice cracking. "This isn't normal." I checked my watch. The hand spun slowly, jerking every few seconds. "Stay focused," I muttered, though my own nerves were fraying. A shadow moved past the doorway. I swung the rifle, finger on the trigger. Nothing. Then a face appeared in the window across the street. A woman's face, pale and expressionless. She stared straight at me, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. I blinked, and she was gone. Ellis let out a strangled sound. There, top floor. I followed his aim. The man with the pale eyes stood on the roof of a building across the street, arms raised. Behind him, shapes writhed in the dark, tall, twisted figures that moved like smoke. Ellis fired a burst, round sparking against the roof. The man didn't flinch. Move, I barked. We bolted from the room, down the stairwell, and into the street. The air was thick, heavy, like running through water. The city was deathly quiet, except for those whispers that followed us like a scent. We sprinted through alleys, taking turns at random, trying to find our way back to the crash site. But the streets had changed. Buildings we'd passed before were gone. Roads twisted back on themselves. Ellis was panting hard, voice breaking. We're not in Mogadishu anymore. Keep moving. We ducked into a side street and froze. Bodies lined the walls, propped up like mannequins. Eyes sewn shut, mouths open. Each had symbols carved into their foreheads. The stench was overwhelming. Ellis gagged, pressing a hand to his face. In the middle of the street stood the man. Stop, I shouted, rifle raised. He raised his hand, and I felt my knees buckle. My vision dimmed, black creeping at the edges. Ellis screamed behind me. I forced myself to aim, finger tightening on the trigger. The man's pale eyes met mine, and suddenly I wasn't in the street anymore. I was on a rooftop, looking down at myself. The city stretched out below, endless. Streets forming symbols I didn't recognize. The whispers were deafening now, 1,000 voices chanting in unison. Then I was back, gasping for air. The man was gone. Ellis grabbed my arm. We have to get out of here, Sarge. Please. I nodded, though my legs felt like lead. We stumbled forward, deeper into the nightmare. And that's when we heard it, a helicopter, distant but real. Hope. We ran toward the sound. The sound of rotor blades was faint, almost swallowed by the whispers that had become a constant backdrop. But it was there, real, mechanical. Ellis and I sprinted through rubble-strewn alleys, the glow of distant fires lighting our path. We burst into a wide intersection, and there it was, the wreckage of a Black Hawk. The tail boom was snapped clean off, rotor blades bent like twisted metal flowers. The fuselage sat like a tomb in the center of the street. Friendly. The helicopter was silent. The side door hung open, dangling like a broken limb. I approached carefully, rifle raised. The first body was slumped in the doorway. Helmet cracked, visor shattered. His eyes, they weren't right. They'd turned milky white, as if drowned in frost. Jesus Christ, Ellis whispered, stepping back. Inside, it was worse. The crew was still strapped in, heads lolled, bodies mutilated. Not by shrapnel or fire. It was like something had torn into them, skin flayed, bones exposed, symbols carved into their forearms. One of them, the co-pilot, had something clenched in his fist. I pried it loose. A fragment of paper, torn from a map, covered in blood and strange markings. The same spiral symbols I'd seen painted in the streets. Ellis leaned against the chopper, gagging. We need to get out of here. We need to. A sound cut him off. Not gunfire. Not footsteps. A low hum, mechanical yet organic, vibrating through the air. The bodies in the helicopter twitched. Move, I shouted, shoving Ellis back. The hum grew louder, reverberating through my chest. The helicopter's electronics flickered, dead screens flashing to life, radios crackling. A distorted voice came through the static. Mercer, you should not be here. I froze. Ellis grabbed my arm. Sarge, let's go. We bolted down a side alley just as the helicopter's interior lights exploded in a burst of sparks. Behind us, the hum rose into a deafening screech. We ran until our lungs burned, twisting through alleyways until we collapsed in the shadow of a half-demolished building. Ellis sat against the wall, head in his hands. This city's cursed. I swear to God, this city's alive. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. I couldn't, because deep down, I was starting to believe it too. The air around us shifted, colder now. The whispers turned to chanting. The language was still unrecognizable, but I felt the weight of it, like hearing my own name buried in every word. "Rest 5, I whispered, scanning the rooftops. Ellis nodded, wiping sweat and grime from his face. We stayed silent, weapons ready, but I could feel it. The city wasn't just watching us, it was hunting us. We moved at first light, or what we thought was light. The sky above Mogadishu was a dirty orange, choked with smoke. The sun was nothing more than a dim red smear. We followed what we thought was the way back to the rally point, but every street seemed wrong. The alleys were narrower, buildings leaning inward like jagged teeth. The smell of rot was everywhere. Ellis kept glancing over his shoulder. "They're following us." I didn't ask who, because I already knew. We passed an alley where shadows writhed against the walls. They moved independently of the light, stretching and twisting like smoke in water. I kept my rifle up, but every time I tried to focus, they vanished. Ellis muttered a prayer under his breath. The chanting grew louder. It wasn't coming from a single direction anymore. It was inside our helmets, inside our skulls. My vision blurred, and for a second I wasn't in Mogadishu at all. I was standing on a barren plain under a black sky, surrounded by towers of bone. Shapes moved in the distance, pale and immense. I blinked, and I was back, heart pounding. Ellis grabbed my arm. "Sarge, you okay?" "Keep moving." We reached what looked like a mosque. Minaret cracked and leaning, doors blown open. We ducked inside for cover. The interior was dark, walls covered in strange murals. At first, I thought they were religious paintings. Then I realized they were maps. The streets of Mogadishu, drawn in intricate spirals and symbols, like a circuit board. Ellis traced a finger over one of the symbols. "This is coordinates?" "No, wait." The air turned cold. A shadow fell over us. I swung my rifle up, and there he was again, the pale-eyed man, standing in the doorway. He didn't speak. He just raised his hand. My rifle jammed. The trigger wouldn't move. Ellis fired, but his rounds went wide, hitting nothing. The man glided forward, his eyes glowing faintly. "Run!" I shouted. We bolted through a side door, back into the twisting streets. Something followed us. I could feel it. The air behind us rippled, heavy footsteps echoing. But when I glanced back, there was nothing there. We rounded a corner and froze. Ahead was a street filled with bodies, hundreds of them, stacked like firewood. Soldiers, civilians, militia, all decomposed beyond recognition. Their mouths were sewn shut, their eyes gouged out. Ellis gagged. "Sarge, this is..." I grabbed his vest. "Move. Don't look." As we pushed through, I realized something horrifying. All the bodies were facing the same direction, facing toward the heart of the city. And whatever they were looking at, we were being driven straight to it. By mid-afternoon, if time still meant anything, we stumbled into a courtyard unlike anything I'd seen in Somalia. The buildings around it were ancient, their architecture older than colonial times. At the center stood a stone obelisk covered in the same spirals and symbols we'd seen all night. The air was colder here, unnaturally so. The whispers had stopped. Ellis raised his rifle, scanning. "Feels like a trap." "It is," I said. The obelisk hummed softly, like it was alive. My head throbbed, and for a moment, I saw something impossible. The city from above, its streets and alleys forming a massive sigil, a design etched into the earth itself. Ellis clutched his head, dropping to his knees. "Make it stop." I grabbed him, dragging him behind cover. "Stay with me." That's when the pale-eyed man appeared again, standing at the base of the obelisk. This time, I didn't hesitate. I fired. The round hit him square in the chest. He didn't flinch. Instead, he raised his hand. The air around us bent, a wave of pressure slamming into my chest. Ellis screamed as he was lifted off the ground and thrown into a wall. I crawled toward him, ears ringing, vision swimming. The man stepped closer, his robes flowing like liquid shadow. His voice was inside my head, calm and cold. "You brought your war into our city. You are not the first. You will not be the last." I aimed again, but my hands were shaking. He raised his hand higher, and the ground beneath us cracked open. From the fissure rose figures, tall, skeletal shapes with glowing eyes, their bodies made of smoke and ash. They moved silently, their heads tilting as if curious, firing wildly. The rounds passed through them like mist. One of the creatures reached for him. Its fingers brushed his helmet, and he convulsed, screaming. I lunged, dragging him back. "Move, damn it!" We sprinted, weaving through the courtyard as the creatures closed in. The obelisk pulsed brighter, casting everything in sickly green light. We ducked into an alley, breath ragged. Behind us, the chanting started again, louder, deafening. Ellis collapsed against a wall, shaking violently. "Sarge," they touched me. I looked into his eyes. They weren't right. His pupils were blown wide, his veins dark. "We're getting out," I said, though my voice shook. "We're getting out." But deep down, I wasn't sure there was a way out anymore. We stumbled through the alleys, guided by instinct more than memory. Ellis was barely conscious, leaning on me heavily. His skin was cold, his breath ragged. The streets were silent now, the kind of silence that feels alive, like something is holding its breath. We turned a corner and saw it, a Humvee, abandoned but intact, parked near a collapsed wall. Hope surged through me. I dragged Ellis toward it, scanning the rooftops. No sign of the pale-eyed man, no whispers. We climbed inside. The keys were still in the ignition. I cranked it. The engine coughed, sputtered, and roared to life. "Hang on," I told Ellis. I slammed the Humvee into gear and tore through the streets, bouncing over rubble and debris. The GPS flickered back to life for a moment, showing a single blinking dot, the rally point. We were close. Then the radio crackled. "Mercer." The voice was distorted, but it wasn't unfamiliar. It was Ellis's voice. I glanced at him. He was slumped against the door, barely conscious. The voice on the radio repeated, "Turn around." The Humvee jerked violently as if something massive had hit it. I fought to keep control, swerving down an alley. Shapes flickered in the mirrors, those same skeletal figures, keeping pace effortlessly. The road ahead split. I took a left, and found myself back at the courtyard. The obelisk loomed before us, pulsing. The pale-eyed man stood there, waiting. "No," I muttered, slamming the Humvee into reverse. The alley behind us closed in, walls shifting like they were alive. The street folded in on itself, trapping us. Ellis stirred, eyes glowing faintly. "It's not a city," he whispered. "It's a prison." The Humvee's engine died. I grabbed my rifle and dragged Ellis out, heart hammering. The chanting was deafening now. The creatures surrounded us, their forms solidifying. They towered over us, eyes like burning coals. The pale-eyed man approached, calm as death. "You came to take life," he said. "Now you will stay and feed it." I raised my rifle and fired. The bullet passed through him, striking the obelisk. It screamed. The ground shook violently. The creatures recoiled, and the air filled with a blinding light. I grabbed Ellis and ran, sprinting through collapsing streets. Buildings crumbled, alleys twisted. The world itself seemed to bend. Somehow, I found myself on a familiar street, extraction point. A Black Hawk hovered overhead, ropes dangling. "Go!" I shouted, shoving Ellis toward the rope. He climbed weakly, disappearing into the chopper. I grabbed the rope next, but before I could ascend, a hand clamped onto my ankle. I looked down. The pale-eyed man stared up at me. "You don't leave." I woke up on the floor of the helicopter, shaking uncontrollably. The crew was shouting, medics working on Ellis, whose skin was ice cold and veins blackened. We flew out over the ocean, leaving Mogadishu behind. Ellis died before we touched down. They said it was shock, trauma, some infection, but I saw the look in the medic's eyes when he zipped up the bag. He'd seen things he couldn't explain. The official report scrubbed our entire mission. Lost communications, ambushed by hostile militia. Extraction successful. They buried the truth, like they always do. But I can't bury it. 20 years later, I still see the man with the pale eyes every night. I see the obelisk, the city twisting like a maze. I hear the whispers and static when I turn on a radio. I keep maps of Mogadishu on my wall, tracing the streets, trying to find that courtyard again. Sometimes I dream in spirals, waking up with nosebleeds and symbols carved into my memory. I'm not the only one. Last year, I got a call from an old ranger I served with. He'd been deployed to Somalia again. "The city's changing," he whispered. "Streets aren't where they used to be." 2 weeks later, he vanished. Ellis's family never got the truth. His dog tags sit on my desk, cold and heavy. I've thought about going back, about finding that courtyard, that obelisk, and ending this. But deep down, I know Mogadishu isn't just a place. It's something alive, a predator, a memory trap. We weren't the first soldiers to stumble into it. We won't be the last. Some nights, I swear I hear helicopters overhead, circling endlessly. Other nights, I see Ellis standing at the foot of my bed, eyes pale, mouth sewn shut. I wake up screaming, rifle in hand, sweat soaking the sheets. The army calls it PTSD. Maybe they're right. Or maybe Mogadishu marked me. Maybe it's still hunting. The scariest part isn't the nightmares. It's the mornings when I wake up and don't know where I am. When the streets outside my window look wrong, just slightly. Like one day, I'll step outside and I'll be back there. Back in that courtyard. Back in that city that isn't a city. And this time, I won't make it out. Because Mogadishu doesn't forget. And neither do I.